Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in the clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better, and it really is turning into here is the new how things are getting worse update when it comes to Rachel Reeves's absolutely atrocious addressing of the economy. So I've done plenty of videos before on her tax regime, how she's just giving free handouts to the public sector, expecting absolutely no productivity in return. How as a result of all this, it's effectively meant that while people will not see their pay reduced, they actually won't see their pay at all in some cases because there's going to be some job cuts, and I'm going further into that as well. Due to her tax rises, due to the cost on business being ramped up, it's frankly bringing the economy to a halt, as Morgan Stanley cuts the UK's 2025 GDP growth forecast to 0.9%. Now, you've got to bear in mind that, again, I've covered this before, but the Labour benches were cheering at a 1.5% growth in GDP, forgetting that while inflation's target is at 2% and while inflation is actually at 2.5%, that means in real terms we're actually contracting. However, you can prove anything with statistics, and they're saying any sort of GDP growth is actually good. But the growth going smaller means that, well, the promises to go for growth seem very paper thin. This, by the way, just to be fully clear, is a decrease of 0.4%. Morgan Stanley originally had the growth forecast at 1.3%. And these big aggregators of data and these finances, they tend to have a much better grip on what the economy actually looks like, because at the moment, the British government seems to specifically just use the OBR statistics as their main point of call, and that's because the OBR pretty consistently inflate just how well Britain is actually going to be doing. So we're actually probably looking at a much more accurate figure here. And also because GDP growth is technically in the positive, we're nowhere near a recession. However, at the end of the day, when it comes to technical statistics and things like this, people don't really care. People care about what they see in day-to-day life. And when it comes to the government, they care what they see in day-to-day tax revenue and headlines. And headlines, as I covered in a previous video, have been all about how millionaires are leaving the country because, well, of the tax system, and especially foreign millionaires who like to take advantage of our non-dom tax benefits. And so, despite it being one of their headlines in the manifesto, plans to abolish the non-dom status will be amended to allow a more generous phase-out of tax benefits, Rachel Reeves has announced. Reeves told the audience at the World Economic Forum in Davos that changes will be made to upcoming legislation to increase the generosity of a facility to help non-doms repatriate their funds to the UK. Non-dom status enables people who live in the UK to avoid paying UK tax on money made abroad because their permanent home for tax purposes is outside the country. And this is really advantageous to the UK because, okay, we're not double dipping on money they make outside the UK, but typically they spend an awful lot of money in the UK and they directly have to pay a one-off fee once per year to HMRC to avoid paying taxes for their assets abroad. And as I say, I went through the statistics the other day, and basically getting rid of the non-dom status is actually going to, well, it's actually going to cost the government about £1 billion, and they thought it would bring in about £2.5 billion or something like that. Which means that, yes, taxes for everyone else is probably going to have to go up as a result of this. So overall, it's a decent U-turn. It's not as good as I thought it was. This is not getting rid of the stupid idea to get rid of the non-dom status. It is instead an attempt to actually try and incentivise the money made abroad to get those assets into the UK so they can tax them. It's still really stupid is what I'm saying, but at least they're actually reacting to reality, which is more than I thought they'd do. Anyway, the headlines have only got worse this week. Recession fears grow as companies prepare to ramp up staff cuts. Businesses' low confidence and growing costs complicates the bank's coming decision on rates. And I don't think it's a recession fear. I think what's actually happened is we're currently in a recession and have been for, a while, a few months at the very least. And the statistics are only going to catch up on that reality as time goes on. And anyway, when it comes to recessions anecdotally, what the old saying is it's a recession when one of your neighbours loses their job, it's a depression when you lose your job. And at the moment we're talking about job cuts in the thousands, which really isn't helping given the fact that younger people simply just aren't getting jobs because, well, they're in a depressed state because all they have known all their lives is woeful news when it comes to any sort of economic or opportunity news. I know for people I went to university with, the only people that are really happy with their life are those that managed to get on grad schemes and have effectively managed to railroad their life where they effectively get all the way through school and uni and then they're railroaded straight onto a corporate job and they stay there forever. They're very happy with it, it's fine with them, but that is not the life that I would like, and it's not the life that everyone can have. There's only so many grad schemes out there. Bosses in the private sector say they expected a significant fall in activity over the next 3 months, according to a survey by the Confederation of British Industry. And it feels like every week I'm going through a story where some confederation or some group that oversees how businesses are feeling give us nothing but bad news. Businesses across all main sectors, including manufacturing, services and retail, forecast a decline in January, having fallen over the previous 3-month period, it said. Companies are now... again, a fall. Yet again, less growth. The way they're going to try and balance the GDP, by the way, is by public spending. Because obviously that is incorporated into the GDP. But at the end of the day, if you're just wasting money there, it's not really growth, is it? Companies are now cutting staff, moving jobs overseas and curbing investment as they battle to cut costs and offset the impact of the Chancellor's looming tax changes, the CBI warned. Alpesh Paleja, an economist at the CBI, also more qualified than Rachel from accounts, said, after a grim lead up to Christmas, the new year hasn't brought any sense of renewal. There is urgent need to get momentum back in the economy. The government can help shift the UK's economic narrative with more determined focus on measures that could drive growth. Yeah, and just saying we are a government of growth isn't cutting it. Half the country didn't believe that. The other half are either only looking at their own paycheck if they're in a union, or have no idea what a supply and demand curve is, and therefore just believe the Labour government when they say they go for growth. Those of us who are actually looking at the statistics, though, yes, we can see an inevitable recession incoming. There are concerns that the UK is already in recession after official figures published earlier this month showed growth flatlined in November after contracting in both September and October. Meanwhile, disappointing retail sales in December have pushed analysis to warn of a growing risk that the economy contracted at the end of last year. And as much as people would like to blame the Tories for that, I'm sorry, but when it comes to let me change that argument. If Liz Truss could crash the economy in 49 days, then my God, obviously the Labour government could crash the economy in 6 months. In fact, even more than 6 months at this point. The CBI said the data supported the view that the economy was pretty flat in the final months of 2024. It marks the second month in a row that the outlook among businesses was at its weakest over 2 years. Andrew Griffith, the Shadow Business Secretary, accused the Chancellor of continuing to ignore the pleas of business. And that's just true. He added, despite saying that she wants to go for growth, businesses are clear that the real blocker to growth is Rachel Reeves and the mistakes being made by this government. Again, very true. But my God, this article goes into more grim news. Separate data published by EY showed the profit warnings issued by companies surged close to record levels last year. Almost 1 in 5 companies listed on the London Stock Exchange issued a profit warning of 2024, the only worst year this century were the pandemic years in 2020 and the combined effect of the dot-com bubble burst in the September 11th terrorist attack in 2001. So this is actually worse than I was expecting. Labour is so bad with the economy that they are rivaling a literal pandemic where we shut down the entire country and there was basically no economic growth for a year. And when the Twin Towers were attacked and the dot-com bubble burst, in other words, Labour is so catastrophic they are rivaling literal catastrophes for how badly they are handling the economy. Profits on the high street took a particular pounding, with 38% of retailers issuing alerts. EY pointed to volatile demand from shoppers and warned that pressure on the bottom line will continue to intensify. Yes, well, unfortunately, us consumers have absolutely no money because we are taxed up to the eyeballs. EY found that although cheap interest rates had helped businesses survive the pandemic, more companies are now reaching a tipping point as cumulative pressure builds. Treasury spokesperson said, "We delivered a once-in-a-parliament budget to wipe the slate clean and deliver the stability businesses so desperately need while not increasing tax on people's payslips." Yeah, you gave them stability in that they are stably failing. By bringing back political and financial stability, we are creating conditions for economic growth, and people are already fed up of hearing that absolute nonsense, because then the next day they see headlines like this. Sainsbury's cut 3,000 jobs and close cafes. At $1 billion cost-cutting drive leaves uncertain future for thousands of head office staff. And I know there's going to be some leftist in my comments saying, oh, well, supermarkets make billions of pounds of profit. Yeah, I've done the maths on it before. It effectively comes down to about £8 per person per year in terms of the profit they make. And at the end of the day, you know, these supermarkets aren't going to stack their shelves full of food that we kind of rely on to live if they're not making money off it. Now, you can call that selfish all you want, but at the end of the day, they run razor-thin margins of anywhere between 1% and 2%. Effectively, and I do mean this, supermarkets are effectively charities. Sainsbury's is to cut more than 3,000 jobs in the UK before the rise in budget-induced costs this April. The supermarket group plans to reduce senior management roles by a fifth and is closing its cafes and hot counters. Now, the senior management roles I completely understand, and to be honest, they probably are bloated in the management level anyway. Closing cafes and hot counters, though, that's just depressing for everyone. Simon Roberts, chief executive of the UK's second largest grocer, said the business was facing into a particularly challenging cost environment after the proposed wage increases and had to make some tough choices. Yes, because supermarkets will be hit doubly. They'll be hit by the national wage increase or the minimum wage increase, plus the changes to the national insurance contributions that employers have to make. Absolutely massive. I'm not shocked that they're having to get rid of people. Accountants I know are all saying that effectively where the talks are at the moment is, who do we get rid of then? I'm not being funny. This is genuinely reminding me of when my dad was a hiring manager back in 2008, and he'd come home depressed for about 2 months because every day he'd have to go in and fire someone else. And it's not easy seeing someone who is already worried about the recession coming in, but then they don't have a job. Like, I can completely understand it, and this is where we're at again. The supermarket chain, one of the biggest private sector employers in the country, is with about 150,000 workers, and said it planned to restructure its head office department to become dedicated to the different needs of the Sainsbury's and Argos businesses while creating fewer, bigger roles with clearer accountabilities. So they're streamlining the whole business, so I suppose there's that as well. It said that the changes were designed to bring costs down through an estimated 20% reduction in senior management roles over the next few months, subject to consultation. It forms part of the retailer's already announced efforts to slash $1 billion from the costs as a business, which has already included 1,500 job cuts last year. So this is just exacerbating a problem that they already had. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that they are streamlining the business. It's always good to see efficiency being put into place, because at the end of the day, what's going to change with the changes in head office when it comes to the actual consumer buying their food? Not very much, which is why the issue comes in with the cafes and hot counters. And I wouldn't be shocked if there was more of an emphasis on please use the self-checkout, because we simply do not have the staff to man the tills. And once again, this is all just part of a larger trend too. Clive Black of Shore Capital, the broker, said the move was very much in line with our concerns that the UK is facing a period of more elevated unemployment if the UK government does not make better decisions and soon. Redeployment of its colleagues is being explored, but we sense a significant number of people are affected by this decision. Asked how the government would respond to suggestions that layoffs at the supermarket were influenced by the budget, the PM's official spokesman said growing the economy, backing business, putting more money into people's pockets are obviously the priority. It is only by growing the economy we can fund our public services and raise living standards. People are fed up with this already, by the way. This is why Starmer is... I mean, I said universally hated the other day, but my mum keeps pointing out you should probably stop being so hyperbolic like that, because there are people that like him because he gives out free stuff. Which is fair and true, so I'll put it this way instead. It's why he's universally disliked by people who are productive. But as we said at the budget, difficult decisions were needed to restore economic stability and put finances back on the stable footing following the $22 billion black hole that nobody believes anymore, and that was a precursor to driving economic growth. Sainsbury's shares down 8.5% over the past year, slid 1.6% close to 253.25 pence per share. So it's lowering its value again because we are quite clearly already in a recession. It's just nobody really wants to announce it yet, because saying, oh, we're in a recession within Labour's first year in office is going to absolutely blow the vibes-based pundits' minds. And as I say, all of media seems to just be this massive network of let's make the left wing look palatable, but you can't really do that when they put you in a recession again. And I do mean again, because Labour put us in one last time. Tories didn't really get us recovering out of it, sure, but my God, say what you will about Liz Truss, at least when she was actually in office, the economy grew. And it's important to point out, this isn't just retail, this is every sector. BP is to cut 7,700 jobs, or more than 5% of its full-time employed workforce, as part of the $2 billion cost-cutting drive by its chief executive, Murray Auchincloss. As BP struggles, like other oil majors, with the realities of transitioning to a low-carbon economy, the company admitted that there would be more redundancies to come. Again, you just got to bear in mind, what are the rich countries at the moment? all of them are oil exporters. Well, not all of them, but a vast majority of them. You know, Norway, the UAE, Dubai. Dubai's not a country, that's in the UAE. Saudi Arabia. You have oil and you can exploit fossil fuels, you get rich, unless you're Britain, apparently. In fact, no. Or you're Venezuela, I should say. That's where we are. We are in the same group as Venezuela, and people wonder why I call this country a socialist country. We're not communist quite yet. In a memo to employees, Auchincloss, who earlier this week cancelled meetings with investors because of a medical condition, probably due to stress, said he would be laying off 4,700 staff around the world, along with 3,000 contractors. The energy group has a full-time workforce of about 90,000 people. Oh, that's almost 10%, let alone 5%. That's close to 7.5%. We are uniquely positioned to grow value through the energy transition, but that doesn't give us the automatic right to win. The company said the cuts were being made as there was a hit to a $2 billion saving target that Auchincloss set last year when he was promoted to the top job. His predecessor, Bernard Looney, oh no way that was his name, had abruptly resigned over inappropriate relations with employees. Auchincloss, a Canadian, is paid £8 million a year and has been with the company since the merger with Amoco in 1998. As I say, what has this government done? And again, this isn't... You can't even just blame this on Labour this time around. This is the Tories as well going lunatic with the net zero approach. But obviously you put Ed Miliband in, it's clearly only going further to the loony net zero side, and boom, it's costing your economy. Whereas people ignoring that absolute moronic climate agreement in Paris and is going drill baby drill, it's going absolutely crazy with how well it is helping their economies. But this is what happens when you're run by socialists, I suppose. Anyway, I've mentioned most of the major taxes so far, but there's another major tax that caused a political stir that, pretty much every business seems to be against, despite the fact that it's only certain people that benefit from this tax cut. So Tesco, Aldi and Lidl have backed British farmers in their dispute with the government over tax changes in the budget. Tesco said the UK's future food security is at stake and the government should pause the introduction of inheritance tax on farmers worth over £1 million. I suppose it's worth saying at this point that supermarkets do tend to absolutely rinse British farmers, so if they are able to keep the British farming system as it is, they can probably keep rinsing them, so there's definitely self-interest here, but at the same time, farmers largely seem happy with the status quo as well, so where do you go with that? Tesco is Britain's biggest supermarket, and together with Lidl and Aldi, they make up around 45% of British grocery market, so their warnings on Wednesday will add pressure on the government. Asda and Morrisons have already been vocal about backing farmers in the dispute, and Sainsbury's have also called for the government to listen to concerns, while M&S also released a supportive statement on Wednesday. The BBC has contracted the Treasury for comment, saying we'll be supporting the NFU's call for a pause in the implementation of the policy while full consultation carries out, said Ashwin Prasad, Tesco's chief commercial officer, adding after years of policy change it has been harder than ever for them to plan ahead or invest in their farms. And obviously it's now come to a point where it's basically impossible for them to carry on family farms, as I have been through before. And I wouldn't be shocked if many of them just sell in advance or move their money to a trust fund, which, in turn, probably going to mean less taxes overall, because for some reason, Labour are incapable of actually knowing what a second-order consequence is. Anyway, finally, as I say, I like looking at, the anecdotal evidence from people aggregated into surveys. And despite basically everything about this budget being terrible, there's actually once again a generational divide over the state of the economy. British Retail Consortium survey shows that over 60s are the most pessimistic, probably because they've had to live through things like this many times before. So household confidence in the state of the economy worsened significantly to -34, down from -27 in December, according to the Consumer Sentiment Index. So I think what that means is something like 66% of the respondents said they thought that the confidence in the economy was terrible, whereas only 33%-ish, something like that, will have said, yeah, it's pretty good actually, which is just mental. That basically goes to show that about a third of the people in Britain are in a union. That's all I'm getting from that. Among those surveyed, confidence in personal spending on retail declined to -9 in January, down from -3 a month earlier. People's expectations of their own financial situation over the next 3 months slipped to -4, down slightly from -3 in December. People in the UK have just been depressed for for years at this point. We've seen basically no improvement on things, and I still stand by Liz Truss being our best chance to get out of it. I mean, I know she had the biggest state spending plan ever, but that seemed to just be a bit of short-term throw some red meat to the left, and they still hated her for it, so it just goes to show, just ignore them. Take that out, it would have been perfect. Well, not perfect, but it would have been really good. Those aged 18 to 27 are the only generation in the survey who expect the economy to improve in the next 3 months. I have no idea what is wrong with Zoomers. Depending what you look at, I'm a Zoomer, sometimes I'm a millennial. I'm in this really weird born in 96 area, where because I was born in the turn of millennials to Zoomers, I'm very unique from both of them, and I'm finding that is true with other people my age. Where people specifically my age, and it might just be because of the friends I have, pretty much everyone's pessimistic. I don't know anyone who's happy about this apart from rabid Labour supporters, and there aren't many of them my age. However, 60 to 78-year-olds expect the economy to worsen, and it's 2/3 of them, by the way, 66%. It's nuts. These findings are further challenge for retailers who have been grappling with a tough economic environment as shoppers cut back on spending during the crucial golden quarter leading up to Christmas. It's just nuts. I mean, I notably spent less this Christmas on food, so I'm not shocked that they made less profits this December. I'm not shocked that we're probably going to find out that we're in a recession in a month or so, and yes, I am going to be making another video on that. I'm fed up of making videos on how bad Rachel Reeves is. Can they just get rid of her already, please? I have to say as well, anecdotes I've been hearing from Labour supporters is effectively, oh yeah, well clearly they're too right-wing. Clearly they need to push the socialism even more. It'd be absolute utopia then. There are people who are going to be true believers no matter what, and these people need to be completely ignored. The people in the middle who are, vaguely left-wing but realising that actually Labour in charge is being an absolute disaster, now is the time to try and convert them. And I'm not being funny, but with how disastrous Labour are being, I don't think we're going to need to do much to actually convert them. Reforms policies, as far as I can tell, they are mostly fine. I wish they'd be a bit harsher on the NHS, but at the end of the day, they won't get votes if they say we're going to completely reform the NHS to be unrecognisable like it needs to be. So we'll take what we can get when we get it, I think. I know that I am radicalised to never vote Labour again. I thought that the economy would kind of be okay under Labour, and it's turning out to be that actually it's kind of the reverse from what I was thinking. I thought they'd ramp up wokeness, and the worst I've seen is that they want women's footballers on more birthday cards, which as far as wokeness goes really isn't too bad from MPs. But when it comes to the economy, I thought they'd be okay, and it's been a disaster. It's been the complete opposite of what I thought it would be. And which is really good news, actually, because more people care about the economy than anything, because people want to be able to live quite adequately. And it's becoming inadequate for an awful lot of people, and will be even worse when they lose their job. So as I say, my prediction, within a month we will start seeing headlines of we are officially in a recession. Bank of England has to do something about it. And further down the line, Rachel Reeves is going to have to go. She will go. There's no way that this is going to carry on as it is. And whoever replaces her will be just as bad, because they will think, oh, changing her, that means that people will, have all the bad stuff with her, and then hopefully we'll have good news stories with this new Chancellor, and then they can be our perfect Chancellor who no one can say anything wrong. Problem is that there's going to be no improvement whatsoever. Problem is as well is that they will carry on with the same policy they have anyway, and it will make things worse. These people do not learn. Again, Rachel Reeves was someone who did PPE at the University of Oxford, and she actually got a 2-1 for it. And then she apparently did a Masters at the London School of Economics, and it just screams to me, what the hell did they teach these people? How is someone who is supposed to be the representative for economics education in the UK managing to be one of the worst chancellors that we've had? Possibly ever? Possibly ever. I don't know. I'd need to look properly back at the 70s and all that, because we've made predictions over on the Worcester Club about rolling blackouts and things like that. And frankly, I think the only way they are going to manage to avoid that is to effectively rely on France and Norway for interconnectors to power our grid, because we can't do it self-sufficiently. At which point you're just costing the taxpayer millions of pounds, well, billions in some cases, to keep these interconnectors open. It's going to up energy costs, so the energy price cap's going to have to go up again, thanks Ed Miliband. And that's going to be the cost for trying to avoid blackouts and really, really, really terrible headlines. The first headline that says blackouts across England, that is going to lead to the downfall of this government. I predict it now. How would it not? At the point people in the modern age can't reliably get power, where basically everything we do relies on power, that is where people are going to think, well, what's the point of all this? I'm fed up with this decline. And you'll probably see unrest. I don't want it. Hence, I have been pushing for sensible energy policy pretty much my entire YouTube career. In fact, that's part of the reason I started it off. But at the end of the day, it's Labour's own fault for causing that unrest by having absolutely insane, ideologically possessed energy policy and putting a mental Marxist in charge of the energy sector. Anyway, I think that's about it for my blackpilling takes of the day. This stuff has to be covered because it needs to be put in people's heads just how dire the situation is. You know, Tories are bad, yeah, I totally agree. Labour probably should have actually changed course rather than just doing what the Tories were doing but quicker, because the Tories were just doing what Labour wanted but slower. Anyway, shill time. We were going to be back with the Antiquity stream tonight, but unfortunately something's come up and I won't be able to make it, so that's coming back next week instead. Tuesday, it is Tosh News, so we're going through the news stories of the week and having a laugh at them, hopefully, or getting very black-pilled. I don't know, find out which over on the Worcester Club, tomorrow at 9. Thursday, I'm on Proper Horror Show's stream, as she's doing yet another, I believe it's Only Connect quiz. Apparently she's done a whole round that is supposed to be dedicated to me, so hopefully I do pretty well at that, because I do not know my horror very well. Proper Horror Show's channel at 8 o'clock on Thursday. Friday, it's Laughing at the Guardian with some women. I've got the guests all lined up. It's a couple of regulars plus a Twitter mutual. No one massive, but it's going to be good fun, I am absolutely sure. So, with that, it's just how you can help out the channel. Simple. Free way. Subscribe, leave a comment, give us a like. It really helps with the algorithm. If you want to help a bit more directly, you can always become a member for £2 a month. It gives you my entire Laughing at the Guardian backlog, which is over 100 episodes, so if anything, that's pretty cheap. And also with that, you can give me super chats and super thanks. They're just friendly donations to say, good job, Haryan, I like what you're doing. Anyway, as I said, that is everything I had for you for today. Sorry to be so black-pilled, but we are in pretty depressing times. There is a recession on the horizon. In fact, we're probably already there. It's just the newspapers are lagging behind with the statistics. And nobody seems to want to be the first person to really say, oh, Labour have put us in a recession. But they'll have to eventually, because nothing is improving. Right, with that is everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.